A second way that UX researchers think differently is that they don't think product or service first, they think user needs first. Perhaps you're designing a government service to help people apply for a driving licence or a passport, or perhaps you're designing a radical new product that will transform an industry like Uber. You already have an outline of the concept and you want to do UX research to see if the idea is any good. How can we design this service for users? Here's the problem with traditional product development in a nutshell. Someone has an idea for a new service. We assume it's a good idea and we do requirements capture. We assume it's a good idea because it's been proposed by a senior manager in our organisation and surely they've done the research to check that this thing is needed. But the problem with this approach is that we're not checking if the idea we're working on is actually any use. This means the business analyst can easily end up defining requirements for a product that's not needed. I'm sure you've heard about government services that we developed at great expense only to be a failure when they were launched. For example, the UK's first e-borders scheme, which aimed to collect and analyse data on everyone travelling to and from the UK, was cancelled after 11 years and an £830 million investment. And in 2013, the UK government scrapped the NHS National Programme for IT. The multi-billion pound project was the biggest civilian IT project of its kind anywhere, ever. Most of the money went down the drain. Those services had gone through business analysis and requirements capture, but no one discovered the user needs for the services. But it's not just government services. Here's another recent example. This picture shows a $700 Wi-Fi enabled juicer from a company known as Juiceero. Juiceero solved, I just did that air quote thing with my fingers by the way, the problem of chopping vegetables by selling pre-packaged, pre-chopped produce in special packs. But despite attracting $120 million in venture capital funding, no one from Juiceero did the research to discover if peeling and chopping vegetables is really a hassle for people. And it turns out it isn't, well, at least not enough of a hassle to justify buying a minimum of 5 Juiceero packs a week at $7 to $10 a pack. The final nail in Juiceero's coffin came when reporters at Bloomberg demonstrated that the proprietary juice bags could be just as easily squeezed by hand. Like boo.com before it, the failed website that Jacob Nielsen famously described as one of the very few high-profile sites that dared violate my design principles, Juiceero will no doubt become a case study on the consequences of ignoring user research. The solution is user needs research. Now, when someone has an idea for a new service, we explore the idea by researching the meaningful activity where this service might help. And as we research the meaningful activity, we may well come up with other needs that are much more useful and important to me. This means the initial idea will almost certainly change as we go through discovery. It means there's an important difference in philosophy between traditional business analysis and UX research. Business analysts tend to think business first. This means they often expect users to change the way they do things in order to use the product, since they see the business as the most important entity. In contrast, UX researchers think user first. This means that the UX researcher may need to get the business to change the way it does things because they see the user as the most important entity. Let me introduce you to a diagram. In 2005, the Design Council introduced a design process model known as the double diamond, divided into 4 distinct phases that you can see here: discover, define, develop, and deliver. The model maps the divergent and convergent stages of the design process, showing the different modes of thinking that designers use. Now, on first glance, this may feel like a familiar process, but my experience with development teams shows that they don't spend much time, if at all, in the discover phase of this model, where they're meant to be understanding how users solve the problem now, or in the define phase, where they're meant to decide on the user need they'll serve. Yet it's in these 2 areas where development teams have the best chance of creating a great user experience. Instead, designers without a UX background rush to optimize the usability of a solution based on preconceived ideas before they've properly explored their users' goals, needs, and motivations. But an exploration phase is critical to innovation because you're never going to iterate towards a transformative solution. If you start with a website and iterate, what are you going to end up with? It's going to be a website. It may be the best possible kind of website, but it's still a website. To be truly innovative, you need to spend serious time in the discover and define phases to give you the ideas you need to create innovative solutions in the develop and deliver phases. How can you tell if you're doing it wrong? Well, Seth Godin has famously said, don't find customers for your products, find products for your customers. So to check if you're in the discover, define phases and not in the develop, deliver phases, ask, are we showing users a prototype? If the answer is yes, you're actually in the develop phase because you're already thinking in terms of solutions. This isn't the way to become innovative. Innovation happens only when teams fundamentally question what they're designing. And the best way to raise these questions is by understanding users' needs, goals, and motivations. Effective UX researchers think differently. Instead, they go out and do field research with their users. Rather than focus on the product or service, they ask, what meaningful activity do people carry out that our product or service might help with? They focus on that, not the product. Now, in contrast, many project teams seem to think, we've created a really innovative solution. We're just looking for a problem to go with it. So the second way that UX researchers think differently is that they don't think product or service first, they think user needs first. In the next video, we'll turn to the third way that UX researchers think differently.